How is it going, YouTube? This is our first ever gacha ranking video, and as such, each month we hope to be increasing the amount of gachas that we can add to this list, go back to some of the more popular gacha games that I have not played to make an accurate ranking on and add them to the list, as well as update if any of these games should be dropped down or brought up based on their significant changes. So with that said, guys, this is not a sponsored video in any way, shape, or form, so every opinion I am about to give you are 100% my own. This ranking goes down as follows. We have several categories in which we rank from 0 to 10. We average out the results, and then based off their overall ranking determines which tier they actually fall into. So the rankings that we actually go through are the graphics, the story, the progression, the gameplay, the game's actual monetization, and last but not least, the community, guys. And community is a little bit of both things. It is both their online presence and their in-game camaraderie, how often you can make a name for yourself, how easy is it to establish friendships, meet new people, have those social interactions. What up, this is Editor J. You can tell because my white v-neck instead of my black one. We are giving away 50 Bezos bucks once we hit 1,000 subs, guys. Anyone that is a sub, if you comment on a video, you get a marble entered into the competition. And hey, if we are past 1,000 subs, go ahead and do it anyway. We are definitely going to be doing something after it. We hit the 1,000 mark, so you might as well get on that one.
Hey, listen.
So first things first, we got to go over the very popular games that I have not played to a degree in which I can give an accurate ranking for. So if your favorite gacha's name is on this list, be sure to go into the comments, let me know what that game is, and if it has the most upvotes, I will be sure to play it over the course of next month at twitch.tv/gachaj. We will add it to this ranking list, and if you don't see your game up here at all, be sure to do the same. The ones to be played are the ones that I know for sure are very popular and active. So if you don't see yours up there, I'm sorry, but convince me otherwise. So with that being said, let's hop into our ranking. First things first, guys, this is the only game to finish with the 9 or higher is far and away Guardian Tales. Now that might surprise a lot of you, but let's break this down. Guardian Tales might be an 8-bit game, so they actually clock in on the graphics 0 to 10 at an 8. But that 8 bits comes with a lot of charm, and the people of Cacao Group, they definitely know what they are doing to give this game the most with the engine that they built for it. Being 8-bit generally has its downside. It doesn't attract a lot of people, but this game definitely has that old arcade feel with a ton of charm and a ton of character that you are looking for, a ton of humor that comes about from the 8-bit style itself, and overall, the game can't be a 10 given that it's 8 bits, and generally I would put an 8-bit at like a 4 or at a 5, with 5 being the average quality of a game. But these guys really hit it out of the park. Now, and the next asset of story is where this game truly shines. This game is a 10 out of 10 in terms of its story development. This game is by far the most humorous gacha you will ever play. I have both laughed, I have cried, I have gone online and researched how I felt about things. This game has made me think intrinsically. I remember just about every detail of this game's story after the first playthrough. Even though this game doesn't truly build characters, it has an amazing story if you can walk away and remember just about everything. It doesn't happen in a lot of games. So these people really nailed it out of the park when it came to story. I actually get excited for new chapters. I actually look forward to seeing what new jokes they come up with, how they can tie this into the universe, what new characters are going to introduce, the background of the characters that we do still have. It's a really well flushed out story, and it is definitely worth checking out. Now, for the actual character progression though, it comes in at an 8 out of 10. And the only way that this thing is coming at an 8 out of 10 is because of one simple fact. It takes way too long to get your natural 3s, which are the rarest units you can get into the game, to 5 stars. It has legitimately taken me every bit of stamina I have gotten for 2 months to get my Nori from 3 stars to 5 stars, guys. That is absurd. You can get your more generic units from a 2-star to a 5-star in about a week if you want to. But the actual leveling itself is very fun. The gathering of resources is very fun. The grind that actually goes into doing this isn't bad in itself. It is just the time commitment that it takes to get these things to 5 stars and maxed out. It's incredibly long. If they addressed just that issue alone, and I mean just that one, this would be a 10 out of 10 in terms of character progression as well. And Guardian Tales also comes in at a 10 out of 10 in terms of gameplay. So how can I say that? Well, really, each different character you play feels kind of unique. You definitely feel like you are playing that character when you're playing them. The skills that you acquire playing Bari do not translate to Tinia, and the things that you get by playing Flying Tinia do not impact the way that you play Marina in any way, shape, or form. Despite it being 8-bit and live action, the way that they go about the game is very, very unique. It is very, very fun. You can actually master certain heroes, and you can actually feel like the way you play the game is impacting your overall result. That isn't really the same for a lot of these strategy games. It's a lot of these gacha games are actually coming out here just trying to stat stick you. Can you pay enough to get to the next ranking? And so with that said, gameplay for a gacha, this comes at 10 out of 10. And as you can probably tell, the uniqueness factor of Guardian Tales is also a 10 out of 10. I definitely understand which characters are in front of me. I definitely know what my favorites are. I definitely walk away from Guardian Tales remembering what is going on, the things that make it unique, the charm that it brings to it, the humor. Now, their monetization strategy comes in at a 9 out of 10 for me. Why is it a 9 out of 10? It's not a 10 out of 10 because I don't know what I'm buying, okay? I give them money because I want to. That is how much this game does, okay? I want to just reward them for the enjoyment that I get out of it. I don't truly understand what I would actually even pay for a lot of the times. And when I do buy crystals, I'm spending it a lot of times on like costumes, sometimes a couple extra rolls for things I don't even need, just to get a little bit more fun out of it. I don't feel like I need to spend money in this game. And for community, Guardian Tales comes out at an 8 out of 10 for me, guys. Now, the only reason it's not at a 10 out of 10 is because the actual in-game ability to make friends is non-existent. And I can say that with certainty because there's not even a friends list. There are guilds, and the guild hall is pretty freaking charming. There are ways to develop friendships in the game, but it kind of relies on you building additional communities through things like Discord and the subreddits and Twitter and stuff like that. And because of that, the online presence of this game is actually fairly high. You can find a lot of YouTubers covering this game. You can go find very active guilds for this game. You can find just casual friends for this play. You can go to the subreddit and find some hilarious memes. The community on this game is on point. With that being said, guys, I just want to reiterate that Guardian Tales clocks out a 9 out of 10 across the board, and they are the only game on this entire list to be above an 8.2. An 8.2, almost an entire point higher than the next thing on this list. And the next thing on this list is Genshin Impact. The majority of people watching this have a very, very distinct feeling of where they would put Genshin Impact. I bet you like 80% of the people out there is like, how dare you not put this in front of Guardian Tales? Do you not see the quality here in Genshin Impact? How do you not say it's better than Guardian Tales? And then there's the other the other 20% that like, that game is trash. That game is just there to steal your soul. That thing needs to be in an F. The terrible practices of that game, they need to just, that game needs to die. And that is exactly why it gets an 8.14 for me, guys. It comes in at 2 at an 8.14. So let's break this down. Graphics, 10 out of 10. Hands down. These graphics are insane. For a gacha game that is free to play, beautifully well done. The world, immense. It is beautiful. The way that it goes about presenting you information through graphical format is very well done as well. And guys, that leads me to the next point. Genshin is a 10 out of 10 story. Now that might surprise you, but if you want to get deep into this thing, man, oh man, there is a lot there. The actual game, in-game story is not fleshed out to its entirety yet, but the way that you go into the game, the more that you pull out of it, you can go into the manga, you can go read the extra books. You can see that everything that's in the game right now to this point, story-wise, is actually just the setup for the rest of the story. That's it. And I personally am amazed by the lore that is there. I have spent hours theory crafting what is coming next because I have enjoyed what is there so much. I was tempted to put this thing at a 9 out of 10 just because there isn't a ton of in-game story at the moment, but the in-game story that's there I really enjoy, and it definitely has me going to secondary resources to learn more about the game, and I can think of like 3 or 4 games that I've ever done that on. So story has to be a 10 out of 10 for me just from that fact alone. And the progression system for this game, I'm clocking it at a 7 out of 10, guys. The only reason it is not at a 10 out of 10 is because once you hit about the 50 to 60 mark in character development, You actually lose the ability to progress at any rate you want without putting in money. The grind becomes immense, and it is a time-based grind. The resin system is very, very poorly done in this game. And because of that fact, 0 to 50 is A+, God tier when it comes to progression systems. You just enjoy leveling up your characters. You enjoy farming the mats that come into it. You enjoy farming the bosses, learning the mechanics behind these things, and getting from 0 to 50 is incredibly enjoyable for a character. Past that point, not so much. But the redeeming quality is you really don't need to get past 50 all that much. You just don't. So I put it at a 7 out of 10 just because the resin system is so poorly done and you can't really progress past a certain point. There is definitely in-game content that you feel like you cannot progress your way into. 7 out of 10 for me on the progression system of Genshin Impact's characters. Gameplay, I'm clocking in at a 9 out of 10. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does Guardian Tales get a 10 out of 10 and Genshin Impact gets a 9 out of 10? The combat system in Genshin is far beyond the capabilities of Guardian Tales. Well, guys, this may be the only game on the list that has a respectable score where the monetization of the game actually negatively impacts the gameplay of the game. There is so much uniqueness to this game that I actually don't feel like I can experience it because of how poor the monetization in this game is. I do not feel like I can give these people $1,000 and be able to experience everything this game has to offer me. That's very, very bad. The packs in this game, man, they steal your soul just a little bit. It costs a ton of money to do these pulls, guys. Now, the actual pulls themselves are pretty similar to other packs, but when you look at the rates, I mean, the fact that you can even spend $1,000 and not be guaranteed all of the content in the game is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. There's no reason that shouldn't be the case. If people are going to be whaling to that degree, it should be from a competitive standpoint, and we can even get into if that's healthy for the game or not as well. But for $1,000, guys, you should be able to experience everything the game has to offer you. You just should. And because you can't, the gameplay suffers because of that. And as you can anticipate, the monetization for this game is a 2 out of 10. This game is so poorly monetized, it hinders your ability to progress in the game to such a capacity. You cannot experience the game as a free-to-play player in its entirety. It is absolutely ridiculous how poorly monetized this game is. The only reason it is not a 1 out of 10, guys, the only reason is because you can get through the entire game without giving it a dime. You can actually play the game as a free-to-play player and get all the way through everything, period. But so many of the uniqueness, so many of the heroes, so many of all the things you actually want out of the game are hidden behind these gigantic paywalls that you aren't even guaranteed to pay your way through, that it just has to be a 2 out of 10. It has to. So the only point that it gets is that it is, by definition, free to play in the way that I define it. It's free to get fun out of it. It's free to get to the end game, and it's free to progress. It's just not free to get all the gameplay. And that's really, really bad. And last but not least, the community in this game gets a 10 out of 10. And you might be asking yourself, how on earth does this, out of all things, get a 10 out of 10 community? The co-op is subpar at best. It barely feels like there's any co-op in this game. The friends list might as well just be a joke. You can't even send the mail in this game. How on earth is the community a 10 out of 10 in Genshin Impact? Well, guys, you don't even need the in-game community. If you can just play with your friends every once in a while, that's enough, because the online presence for this game is insane. There has never been a gacha game that has been mainstream to this point ever in the entirety of gachas. Period. You can go on YouTube. You can get tens of thousands of hours of content for this game if you want it. You can go on Twitter and find tens of thousands of posts about it. You can go on Facebook and find tens of thousands of communities on this game. What this game brings to the community in terms of creative content, in terms of actual commitment by the fan base, in terms of your ability to find friends, is actually insane, because the player base is so freakishly large and people are so invested in the lore and the character design and the uniqueness that this game knocks it out of the park. I think I skipped uniqueness, so we'll go back to that real quick. Uniqueness for me is at a 9 out of 10. The reason that it is not a 10 out of 10 is for two reasons. One, they openly admit that they've tried to copy Breath of the Wild as much as they could. And two, they borrowed so much of the gameplay from Honkai Impact that it simply can't be a 10 out of 10 if it's a combination of these borrowed elements. But they did it in such a way that it is really well done. It very much is its own IP, and you very much feel in game that that IP is strong. So it's a 9 out of 10, 1 point away from a 10 out of 10. I mean, don't knock it. That's amazing. 9 out of 10. Amazing. So guys, that actually does it for our S tier games. And I think the A tier is the most surprising out of everything. I had one game fall above a 7, and it is not the game you were thinking. I promise you that. I was amazed when I came back and saw my rankings, and I had to go through and make sure I actually agreed with the things that I rated it, because I'm that surprised. The only A tier game in Gacha for me at the moment is Dragalia Lost? What? But let's break this down, okay? Dragalia Lost, graphics wise, 9 out of 10, guys. It's a Nintendo game. It's really well designed. You really like the characters. There is a lot going for this game graphically. The animations are smooth, the levels are well designed, the different menus are well done, the animations are crisp. There's a lot to enjoy in this game graphically. Story? It's a 7 out of 10. I mean, it feels kind of generic, but you definitely feel like you have enough character development. You definitely feel attached to what's going on in the world, and you're kind of waiting for the next chapter updates to come out. So it's actually pretty good story-wise. Progression system at a 9. I think Dragalia Lost actually does progression better than just about any other game out there. You can get a new hero, and with an appropriate amount of time commitment, you can get it to be in-game viable, and you don't actually feel like you're busting your butt to get something to be playable the second that you roll it, and you're actually enjoying that progress. Obviously, there is some additional grind that gets it to from like playable to like in-game viable, but that should be the case. And so I think the progression system in Dragalia Lost is really spot on. I don't remember ever playing Dragalia Lost and feeling like what's in front of me is too hard to overcome and not enjoying the progress to get it up there. Yeah, the weapons are a little bit clunky when it comes to that, but they're actively working on all of those things, and Nintendo is doing a really good job actually trying to make gacha massively acceptable. And so for that, I think the progression system is top tier. The gameplay at Dragalia Lost, I have it clocked at a 7, which may surprise a lot of people given the Genshin as a 10 out of 10, but Dragalia Lost has a lot of moments where you just kind of feel like you're doing the same thing. It doesn't really separate itself. You can go from character to character, and you're not truly feeling like you're getting any truly unique value out of it. So from that point of view, I think the gameplay gets a little bit repetitive, and it is somewhat generic, but it's still well executed. So it's slightly above a 5, clocking in at a 7. If 5 is average, it's definitely above average, but it's not like exceedingly great. So 7 out of 10 feels pretty appropriate for Dragalia Lost. Uniqueness, I'm going to clock it in at an 8. The characters themselves aren't totally unique. The backgrounds on the characters are pretty unique. How they fit into the universe is pretty interesting as well. I think the design style of it is anime, but still Nintendo. It's overall the unique feel of the game is very much Dragalia Lost. You're not going to get into another game and truly feel like you're playing Dragalia Lost, and so that in and itself makes it fairly unique. So 8 out of 10 feels very, very appropriate for this game. It's a pretty strong IP. If more people were interested in this game and played it longer, I think you would actually see that this game would perform a lot better than it does. And surprisingly, I think the monetization of this game, it goes a long way into making this game not as appealing to the masses of the gacha player base or the hardcore player base as you might imagine. The monetization of Dragalia Lost is actually an 8 out of 10. I feel like the things that they do are very strong. You're giving them money more so because you want to progress quicker in the quality of life scheme, but you don't feel like you have to. Overall, the monetization of this game is very well done. They definitely make this game accessible to free-to-play players, and there's definitely an element of the game that you can get to by whaling, but it doesn't feel like you need to, or that you ought to, or that you're even handicapped by not doing it. So I put the monetization of this game at an 8. And lastly, the community for Dragalia Lost is definitely at a 4, okay? That doesn't mean that there isn't in-game elements that doesn't cater to community. There just isn't much of an online presence. There isn't much to talk about the game. I don't really feel like I can connect connect with people too much or really establish friendships. You're kind of limited in the ways that you can communicate in general. And the game is definitely catered towards children, and children games should not optimally be catered towards community. It just shouldn't be that way. If the community is established, it should be through secondary means, and that's not happening with this game. So 4 out of 10. All right, now we are on to the B tier list. These are the games that clocked above a 6, so above average in most categories, or exceedingly good at some and pretty bad at others. We have 2 games clocking in at 6.714. The first on that list is Illusion Connect. Illusion Connect is a brand new game, so it's actually kind of hard to not be biased about the way that it comes through. But there is a lot of unique elements. Beat down, I won't actually get into the finite details of why I rank these things the way that I did. I will go through the main points of this. Illusion Connect is a very unique game. I love the tactical style that comes into play. I definitely feel like my decisions in the game impact my performance. I feel like the gear system is kind of generic. The way that it scales is kind of whatever. But I definitely feel like the characters are well designed. I feel like the animations are well done. Areas that they're actually giving us animations. The story in the game is definitely lackluster, but overall, Illusion Connect is incredibly fun. I don't mind giving them money when presented the opportunity to do it effectively. I definitely like the different systems that they come into place, be it PvP, be it Arcana. And honestly, when I'm playing against someone else in live PvP, which isn't directly in the game at the moment outside of friend battles, it's incredibly fun. And I definitely feel like there is a skill cap to this game, which is pretty rare for gacha games. So overall, I think that Illusion Connect is a very strong gacha, despite coming off as a generic gacha. It's a very well done gacha. And the game that's actually tied with Illusion Connect is Epic 7. And the reason why Epic 7 doesn't go so well, and go as high, is because in a lot of ways the entire industry is benchmarking against it. It's very interesting to me. Across the board, Epic 7 had a 7 for me. That means that it does everything in the game incredibly well, from PvP to PvE to story to uniqueness. It does everything well, but it doesn't do anything exceedingly greatly. And I think that's just because so many other games look at Epic 7 for inspiration and then try to do one better or try to do one worse, or try to figure out ways that they can optimize it differently. The only area that I thought was average for Epic 7 was the monetization, and I think that's just because so many games actually just copy and paste Epic 7's monetization patterns that is actually the industry standard at this point, and the industry standard can't be anything more than a 5 out of 5. So this game is a 7 across the board. It's an A across the board in everything but monetization, and the only reason that the monetization is a 5 out of 5 is because it's so effective at taking money from you while still feeling like you're being rewarded that it's now the industry average. The gear grinding in the game does kind of suck, but the character progression is fun. Everything about the game kind of sticks out to you in its own unique little way. So across the board, Epic 7 is like the prototypical gacha. It is the benchmark for the generic JRPG style gacha game. There are 2 more games that fall into the B category for me. The first one is coming in just slightly under the other 2 at a 6.57, and that is Tales of Crestoria. Now, Tales of Crestoria definitely had its issues. I called it Tales of Crestoria for the longest time because I had such a hard time getting into it. The elements of Tales of Crestoria that make it shine aren't truly about the game and really just about Tales and Bandai Namco as a whole. The IP for Tales is very strong, but just because of that, using the same, it also impacts its ability to graphically be there, but Tales has always exceedingly done well at stories. This is actually a rather dark, deep story that you find both enjoyable and displeasing at the same time, so it's very well done. The characters are obviously incredibly unique. They're actual IP. They are sellable merchandise. It's part of the actual revenue stream for this company. This game has the assets that you need for it to move forward in terms of uniqueness. But the playstyle itself, the graphics, the monetization, all of that's a little lackluster for where it is. There isn't a ton of overly involved mechanics in this game that truly makes it shine. But just because Tales is such a strong IP in the way that it delivers a story and how that story makes you feel and get attached to characters is really what makes Tales shine. So if you want a gacha game that's really story driven, that's your game. And then the last game clocking in the B tier for me is Idola Phantasy Star. Now this might surprise some people. I think the graphics in this game are are rather generic, but the animations for it are fairly well done. The progression system is, I think a lot of people would say it's good, but it's a little lackluster. You can get someone from 0 to max basically overnight. The only thing that you can't do almost instantaneously is the affinity grind, and that's not that bad even then. So the things that this game is lacking, in all honesty, is just in-game content. The Idola system is incredibly unique. The actual battling system where you have two teams that you have to feed at once, it's an amazing gameplay system for a JRPG. It feels incredibly unique. There's a lot of new mechanics to it, but the two things that hurt it the most is the community element. There's like next to no community out there, but the people that actually are invested in Idola are super hardcore about it, and I love that about the game. So I actually have this at a 3 on the community scale, 3 out of 10. But what the game actually does in game for community is definitely like a 0.5 in terms of community. You can join a guild that does absolutely nothing. The chat elements are basically non-existent. You can borrow someone else's character every once in a while, but that's it. There's like nothing to it. I think the monetization is pretty interesting as well. You don't actually need to overly spend in this, but the game doesn't give you a ton of resources either, so it's slightly below average on the monetization scale, but it's passable. I think the things that Idola excels at greatly, and that's both story and gameplay, but then it just kind of is lacking in everything else. So you can take that as it is. Now the C tier is where things get a little interesting. I'm gonna just throw all of these in here, and then I'm gonna actually tell you a little bit about what I feel about these games. So clocking in first in this is Honkai Impact. Honkai Impact has some fun gameplay, but it's rather generic at the end of the day when you compare it to other titles similar to it. I think that the actual progression system is very, very poorly done, but the story in it is pretty strong. Similar in nature to Arknights. I think Arknights, a lot of people say it really excels in the story department. The gameplay itself is pretty generic in tower defense, but a lot of people are here for the character and the game story itself. But in all honesty, guys, when I was getting into it, the game is really hard to understand in terms of its character and story progression. So I think that if that's supposed to be the selling point, it obviously is capturing the market effectively, but it didn't capture me in that way. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt on that. But to me, it didn't really shine in the way that everybody says it does. And past that, outside of the character design itself, outside of the story itself, I think it's fairly subpar. The monetization's subpar. I think there is a lot of strategy to it, but it's a tower defense game. That's the entire point of it. And I feel like the tower defense element isn't really unique in itself. So I think what you see is an anime playing out in tower defense form, and since I didn't truly understand that anime aspect of it, it didn't overly get 10s or anything like that. It's at the 7 and 8 march. Next up for me is Puzzles and Dragons. That might be surprising to some of y'all because this game is so old, coming out in 2012, but PAD is super unique. The puzzle system in it is still to this day very fun. I still enjoy the evolution system, and they've gone about and changing the monetization of the game to overwhelmingly just giving you a ton of stuff for free. There's basically no redeeming story to it. You're basically there for the character that you have, their actual in-game progression, and the puzzle mechanics of it. I think overall the gameplay of this game is what makes it shine to this day in 2012. I would still go back and enjoy it and have fun with it. And then next comes Exos Heroes. Oh man, Exos Heroes, when it first started, was easily in the A to S tier, and then it just began to drop very, very quickly. The people at Line Games have done a number on this game. There hasn't been anything interesting introduced since inception. There's been a couple of decent banners, but that's really about it. Upon global launch, the game instantly started going downhill, and it's seemingly continue to go down that way. The monetization seems to get worse and worse, and they try to overcome that by giving you one-time gifts of exceeding quality. Exos Heroes itself as a game is definitely an A, but in terms of its entire ecosystem, when it comes into the actual publisher, how it's monetized, the community, the way that the publisher interacts with the community is definitely D to F. So the average 2 out, you get a C. That's Exos in a nutshell. The next I'm going to throw up there is Evertale. Evertale to me was very, very fun on its first playthrough. The first 2 chapters are basically like Pokemon-esque, decent storyline. You enjoy running around the world, getting to know the world, the different characters, the story in itself. The gameplay itself was pretty fun and refreshing. And then past that, it turned into more of a generic game. I think that it still has some redeeming qualities, And I definitely think that if it stayed with its initial system, it would have been a high B, low A, but it didn't. It changed drastically over time. So for that reason, it's at the low end of the C's, but it's still redeeming. It's still really worthwhile doing a single playthrough of the game, but it's not worth much more than that, guys. And then surprisingly, the next on my list is Raid Shadow Legends. Now, I think so many people are going to jump out this and be like, Raid Shadow Legends is easily an F. But guys, the reasons you hate Raid Shadow Legends has everything to do with Polarium and their monetization. It has very little to do with the actual game. The game itself is a high B, low A. The graphics are pretty good. A lot of the characters are super, super unique. And for the gigantic cast of characters that they have, that's crazy. The gear cycle actually changes the outcomes of these games. There is very much an RNG element to that. But the monetization behind this game is abysmal, guys. It's absolutely abysmal. It is nothing short of predatory, and that is why it is a C. Raid Shadow Legends as a game in itself, if you are very, very, very dedicated as a free-to-play player, you will very much enjoy it. If you open up your wallet even the slightest, you are going to hate it. That's basically how it breaks down, guys. You cannot experience the entirety of this game. It is definitely paywalled, and the progression definitely feels capped. But what is there, guys, you will enjoy it. And from there, I'm going to throw the last two out there because they kind of feel the same in a lot of capacities to me, and that is Cantare and Sdorica. I think both of them in terms of how they actually play out gameplay wise is pretty low. I think both of them exceed in the story and the IP aspect of things, but that's really about it. I think that if you like the game, you like the game, and if you're go into the game uninterested, you might walk away completely uninterested. So I think that that's pretty fair of both of them. There's nothing truly redeeming about them. Sdorica definitely has a very charming story to it, but if you like the webtoons that are presented to you in here, Cantare, you're also going to enjoy that a lot as well. But the gameplay in both of them pretty lackluster. I will say that there is a lot of strategy involved in Sdorica, but it isn't overly complex. It isn't something that you're gonna sign up to play. So there's that. And guys, that'll do it for the end of the C tier and on to the D tier. The top of the D tier and almost a C is Lord of Heroes. I think the monetization of Lord of Heroes is the only thing keeping it back. I really enjoyed the actual immersion that the game puts you in. I liked a lot of the characters that I saw. The progression system kind of sucks and the monetization kind of sucks, but if you're just gonna play it to enjoy it, I'm pretty sure that low C to high C is kind of where you would play it. And if they fix the monetization, I could see it creeping into the B. I think the character progression in itself would give it enough chance to be bottom of the barrel B, high C with a great monetization scheme. But since the monetization scheme right now is so poor and the monetization is impacting gameplay, it's currently at a D for me. And then next, I'm going to clock in Monster Super League. Now, this is an interesting one. I do actually like the graphics of it. It feels very Pokemon. It feels very Pokemon-esque because JRPG. There is somewhat of a story to it. The character progression, though, outside the evolutions that are pretty cool, there isn't much there. It's a very generic thing. It very much feels paywalled. You can't really get all the characters that you want. The gear system seems very seems lacking. But overall, I enjoyed my time playing Super League. So there's that. And then the last two are AFK Arena and Hyper Heroes. Hyper Heroes is actually more fun than I would say people give it credit for, but it is very, very much pay to win and pay to progress. There's no in-game community aspect. Similar to AFK Arena, I think AFK Arena actually does character progression very well, and I think that it has enough uniqueness to it to where it's not a bad game. It's just very predatory in its practices for getting money from you. And then last but not least on the F down here in F is Idle Heroes. Idle Heroes only finished above a 5 in one category, and that is character progression. I enjoyed leveling my characters in that game, but just barely. Other than that, there's nothing redeeming in my mind about this game. And so guys, that is currently my gacha tier rankings. If you agree with this, let me know. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below. And if you want your game to be the next one added to this, leave it in the comments below. The most upvoted will be a game that I play on twitch.tv/GachaJ over the course of the next month, guys. Take care. See you soon.